for us and for partners. Just to clarify, the website that I'm referring to will be the nkcareercenter.org website where this will be posted. So just a few items in terms of our agenda for today. Our highlighted topic is what's next for higher ed, how local colleges, universities, training providers are adapting their programs to engage students while meeting industry requirements or industry demands. We all know that in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, post-secondary schools are adapting their training programs to different formats so they can engage students and also meet those industry demands. But what do those formats look like? And how can we pass that information on to prospective students or even current students? I know a lot of us as workforce partners are providing services to individuals that are, many of which now are in transition or have been laid off or furloughed. And so what types of opportunities from a training perspective are available to them with respect to social distancing requirements and safety and health measurements that our local and state and federal government officials are sharing with us. So we have all that in a nice little gift bag, but we also have the whole condition of our local economy, which has been significantly impacted since the middle of March. And so lots of good information to hear. I want to just thank these panelists that we have represented today. And I'm going to do a formal introduction in just a moment, but we've got representatives from the Center for Employment Training, Gateway Community and Technical College, Northern Kentucky University, and Thomas More. And I just want to thank that panel in advance for their commitment to our community. I know the information that we're about to hear from you is going to be extremely relevant and useful as workforce partners, many of which are providing virtual services to individuals and employers, as well as developing plans to eventually phase in the reopening of on-site or in-person services. I also want to acknowledge a couple other workforce partners and training providers, such as the Ensweiler Building Institute, including Dr. Vicki Burling, along with our local public libraries for their ongoing efforts to adapt their programming, who are also helping to support our local workforce and workforce development efforts. So shout out to them. And then I also want to say a special shout out to our social service and community-based organizations, most of which have stayed open during this time, providing services such as emergency assistance and commodities and food pantry services. Many of these organizations are on today's call. So if that's you, thank you. The work that you're doing, Brighton Center, Free Store Food Bank, CAC, the Area Development District, really and truly, and I don't want to, forgive me if I've left anyone out that's on the call, please include yourself in this. The work that you're doing is not just essential, it's heroic. So thank you for that. Before I introduce our panel, I'd like to turn it over to our Workforce Investment Board Director, Tara Johnson-Noem, to provide some remarks. So Tara, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Good morning, Jason, and good morning to everyone. On behalf of the Workforce Investment Board members, just want to say thank you so much for joining us this morning. This is such a great group and a great opportunity for us to gather together and talk about important issues. Not just today, though, much of what we're doing feels so critical in this really uncertain time. I'm really interested to hear from our region's educational leaders about how they're adapting to this current climate in the time of social distancing. So thanks to all the panel members and to all of you. We look forward to hearing your questions toward the end as well. So don't forget to add those to the chat. At the Kentucky Career Center, we know that a few customers have had to delay their planned trainings while others have started new programs. And so, we really are just trying to adapt as quickly as we can to meet everyone's needs. And I know all these partners, all of you are as well. Since the Workforce Investment Board through the Kentucky Career Center focuses on connecting job seekers to our targeted high demand industries, certainly interested to see how those programs in particular are being impacted. I spoke to someone on the phone about a month ago who was having some trouble with her unemployment insurance claim. And while that's normally not something that we work on, we have stepped forward to offer our help to the Commonwealth as they try to take care of those claims. And this person said to me, maybe this is the spark that I needed to step out of the restaurant industry where she apparently had been working for about 25 years. Maybe this is the spark I need, she said, to really do something different and to really think about what my career could be. And in a time of change, people often think about what could be next. And so I can't think of a more timely panel than thinking about our education and training partners. So thanks all. Enjoy the event.
Thanks so much, Tara. We appreciate those remarks. That was great. Now I would like to introduce our panel. And I am really pleased to introduce these individuals, many of which I've worked with for quite some time over the years. And I want to start out with Talia Fry. She joins us from Brighton Center and the Center for Employment and Training. Talia is the Workforce Development Director. She's going to have her presentation in just a moment, but I would like to introduce the rest of the panelists as well. Dr. Terry Von Handorf from Gateway. She is the Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs. Julianne Stockman. She's the Director of Corporate Engagement with Northern Kentucky University and the College of Informatics. And then Dr. Carissa Schutzman, the AVP of Adult and Graduate Education with Thomas More University. So thank you again, panel. We're looking forward to these presentations and this information. And kicking us off first is Talia Fry with the Center for Employment and Training and Brighton Center. So Talia, I will turn it right over to you.
Great, good morning. Thank you, Jason and Tara and the WIB for providing this opportunity for all of us to come together. These are certainly uncertain times, unsettling times for so many families in our community. But what I know for sure is that we have a robust workforce continuum in this community. And so when we think about the dislocated workers and those workers that were already on the sidelines of our labor market, there is opportunity for them to really think about that next step in their career in retraining and retooling. So I'm honored to be a part of this panel. Just a little bit about Center for Employment Training to kick us off. We are a job training program that is operated since 1997 as part of Brighton Center's continuum of services to families. And we are a clock hour program that trains in 3 skill divisions. And so those skill divisions are medical assisting, business and computer technologies, and health technology administration. The reason why we operate in a clock hour setting is, we serve about 140 trainees a year. And so that's not a large number in this continuum of post-secondary education in the community, but we think it's an important part of the continuum, and those 140 trainees who might not have had traditional success in a post-secondary setting or in their secondary setting, and really want to gain some skills, gain a credential, build that work experience, and then continue on and be lifelong learners. We really want to make sure that our graduates continue on to Gateway and NKU and Thomas More and continue to build and stack those educational credentials. But we see that for about 140 people a year, that CET is a great place for them to retool or just get started on a career pathway. And so our Center for Employment Training model is built on 4 cornerstones: adult education, the actual skill training, success skills, what are those essential skills that really trip people up in the workplace, and then what are those career services. Ultimately, we are a job training program, so we want to make sure that people get employed and maintain employment. And so how are we really making sure that our trainees are ready for the labor market? And so our skill divisions are based off of those 5 in-demand sectors in our region. And we've been doing medical assisting for just about our entire history, business and computer technologies, and then health technology administration is one of our newest programs. And that leads to certification as certified professional coder, revenue cycle specialist, or certified professional biller. There are many opportunities for certifications under that program. You know, it's a short-term training environment, so they can be done in as quick as 9 months if they're committed to the training. And, you know, so if we think about that short-term training and that recognized industry credential and being able to get out into the labor market and get connected with that economic mobility as quickly as possible. We have no admissions requirements. So you can work on a GED while you are working with skill training. We have Campbell County Skills U on site at Center for Employment Training, so people can work on that GED. That's not a barrier to enrollment. And also we don't have admission standards as far as what you might need to tab in for math or reading. We build in adult education into our curriculum to make sure that you're going to be able to do the job that you are training for out in the labor market and out at your employer. And so we think that that's a unique way for us when we think about who's coming into the labor market, especially, or into wanting to do training right now, those that have been dislocated, to kind of think about, you know, are there people that might have a barrier to being able to get started into training because they're not going to have the adult education skills that they need? So Center for Employment Training might be a good solution for them. So what does distance education look like for a clock hour program? So distance education for a clock hour program, you know, clock hour programs have not been able to do distance education. And so when the Department of Education offered this opportunity, you know, all of the clock hour programs across the country are like, okay, awesome. Now, how do we do that? Because we still have to maintain that 50 minutes of instruction every 60 minutes. And we have to be able to prove that. And so, you know, we are still operating 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. They have official 3-time daily attendance check-in. But then, of course, there's instruction going on throughout the day. So the instructional staff are able to maintain and be able to make sure that we're maintaining attendance. So, you know, using all of the platforms, Zoom, Google Classroom, Accenture Learning. But, you know, one of the things that we quickly realized for our population and our trainees when we went along this journey, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in depth in a minute, but, you know, we quickly reached out to our trainees and said, you know, when all of this was in the height of everything, and we said, how many of you will be able to do distance education if we move to this platform? And only 41% identified that they had Wi-Fi or a digital tool to be able to do distance education. And so I'll talk about it in a second, but, you know, as we're thinking about digital equity in our community and making sure that people have opportunities for advancement and being able to take care of themselves and their family, certainly realizing very quickly in our community how much of a divide in digital equity that there certainly is. Next slide, thank you. So, you know, really making sure that we are supporting our trainees as we're doing distance education has been really, really important for us. 61% of our trainees are student parents with children 6 or under. So we serve a lot of young families. So really making sure that we are able to not only support them in skill training and obtaining their educational goals, but also making sure that they have the food and hygiene and diapers and financial assistance, connection to UI with our friends at the Kentucky Career Center, and connection to benefits that are available to them. So that has been a really big part of how we're able to maintain people on distance education and that one-on-one coaching and support that we're able to provide to make sure that they are stable enough right now in their family situation to be able to focus on continuing on. We have financial coaching. We have a financial coach who is dedicated to Center for Employment Training, and he has been able to do Zoom coaching sessions and financial wellness workshops with our trainees. We also have an amazing partnership with Greater Cincinnati Behavioral Health that is provided by a generous grant from United Way, where we have a wellness coach dedicated to Center for Employment Training. And so, you know, we've been hearing from our trainees, particularly our young moms who live in isolated communities, how much they are struggling with their mental wellness and their mental health, and really feeling depressed and isolated. And so we've been able to really lean in on our wellness coach with Greater Cincinnati Behavioral Health to be able to provide some one-on-one assistance along with that. And then of course our instructional staff who are available to our trainees and providing that one-on-one instruction and coaching support as we went into these new waters. And so, you know, for us, thinking about distance education and as a clock hour program and new to providing distance education, you know, of course, like, what are we learning? How are we going to improve? And, you know, one of the things that was we always, you know, knew was really important about what happened at Center for Employment Training is, you know, skill training and success skills and adult education, but really the social capital that our trainees build and being in an environment like this was so important. You know, that bonding, that bridging, that linking, and being able to, you know, build relationships that are supportive and building a network, and then also gaining access to employers and people in the field and building that. And that's my timer. I got to wrap it up here. But, you know, how can we build that into a distance education format when we know social capital is so important? How can we do that? And we've certainly, you know, been working on how can we just have coffee chats with our trainees and on Zoom and things like that. But we also realized quickly that, you know, we train on digital skills as part of our curriculum, but when push came to shove, we have a lot of opportunity to strengthen our digital skill training, and realizing even though it was a part of the curriculum, we probably needed to enhance it. Our trainees were struggling with some of those digital skills. And then of course I referenced before, but equity to technology access. And I think, you know, for many of us in this community, we are quickly, you know, from, you know, K through 12 through post-secondary, that there is a huge divide in equity in technology. And how are we as a community, as a country, really thinking about ways that we can ensure equity when it comes to digital technologies, and how important that is. And when we think about poverty and people of color and women, especially. And then of course, those success skills, how are we making sure that people, when they're checking in for their 3-time daily attendance, like that they're not just sending their skill instructor here, they're really practicing those professional skills like, good afternoon, Janika, I'm back from lunch, looking forward to continuing on, you know, really practicing those professional skills for the future. And so if you are working with any job seekers who might be interested in Center for Employment Training, we are enrolling into distance education. We do virtual info sessions Tuesday at 10, Thursday at 2. Contact information there for Jared Mueller. And, you know, for us, when we think about reopening, you know, we are doing contingency plans. You know, what does it look like if we open in July? What does it look like if we open in August? But there are still so many unknown factors. But hopefully sooner rather than later, we'll return to in-person instruction when it's safe for everyone. That's all.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Talia. We appreciate that information. And just a friendly reminder, at the end of today's presentations from all of our speakers, we will have the opportunity for some Q&A, time permitting. So I would say hold on to your questions and then start firing those questions away into the chat at the end of, or towards the end of today's presentations. But thank you, Talia Fry. Appreciate your time very much. It was great. Our next presenter is Dr. Terry Von Handorf from Gateway Community and Technical College. So I will turn it over to you.
Can you hear all good now? Okay, thanks, Julie. Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I think just serving on this panel speaks to our region, that we face obstacles like this as a community, and we know that we are stronger together. So Gateway's response to COVID-19 is, as you all know, historically, higher education does not have a great reputation for being super responsive in a timely fashion, but I think all of our organizations realized we can do it. And I just want to share with you a little bit about Gateway's response to this situation. So on March 12th, we decided to move our in-person classes online, and what added a little layer of excitement to that was that we were on spring break, and so we had to be communicating with faculty and students that we were going to be transitioning to online, but initially we thought maybe for at most 3 weeks. Fortunately, we have an amazing e-learning department, so they worked around the clock working with faculty in getting their lectures put online, and then built tons of resources for students. Again, at that time, we thought it was temporary. So on March 16th, we requested that all employees who could work from home, so that required everyone to make sure they had the equipment that they needed. Tell you that again speaks to your point that even the equity piece, does everyone have a home computer? And we found out that some of our employees didn't have the right equipment. On March 18th, we only opened the Edgewood campus, and we had computers available for students, and it became very clear that we had students without internet access and students without computers, so we were going to have to start thinking about how to serve them. And then on March 23rd, we ended up closing the Edgewood campus and all of our services, so Gateway remained open, but everything from financial aid, admissions, and instruction all moved online. And then on March 25th, we made the decision that all instruction will remain online for the semester. And in April 22nd, we moved to the summer session to online. And we are ongoing planning. As of May 7th, we're still working on how do we teach out our spring students who were in those technical programs. So as soon as I'm finished with this panel, I'm actually heading to the Boone campus. We just submitted plans to CPE and the governor to potentially bring in students to wind up that spring semester in those technical labs. But as you can see, within the span of 13 days, we were able to flip an entire college online and do that very well. Jason, next one, please. Thanks. So why were we able to do this? Well, I think first and foremost, like all of you, you reflect back and you think, how in the world were we able to communicate to all those parties and move those services? And to us, I think it just boiled down to our deep commitment to students. We had students who were supposed to be in short-term certificate programs, finishing this one semester line worker program and going out and getting a great job with Duke Energy. We had nursing students that had jobs ready for them at St. Elizabeth Hospital, and we needed to get them finished so they could begin their careers. I'm going to show you some examples of this in just a minute, but I can say across the board, faculty and staff really embraced all the obstacles that we faced as catalysts for innovation. As Tara said, I think it was the spark that we needed, that, yeah, we can do this. And I think the why was our commitment to students. Faculty and staff and one more back, Jason, thank you. Flexibility was key. We tried things, it didn't work, we tried something else, to the point of we had people who had certain skill sets that we moved them to other departments to work. So for example, we had someone who works in our library, but who was also a wonderful instructional designer. So we suspended her library duties and moved her full-time into instructional design. We have 95 online courses, but with her help, we're putting 5 more online for the summer, especially for the biology courses that our nursing students need to progress. And then finally, coordination and communication. Historically, we've made decisions in silos and not understanding the ramifications of making one change, but this has taught us that one change really does impact all throughout the organization. So we've started to work from something what we call the Pivot Playbook, and it is a spreadsheet with all of our departments in it, and we put it in teams. We've gotten really good at teams also. So it may be a question like, how do we transition all of our fall classes to hybrid learning? Well, then each department goes in and we see what are the concerns and we work through them as a college. It's amazing how one decision just does ripple throughout. Okay. One more, Jason, thanks. So what were some of our responses? What did we flip to go virtual? All of our advising is virtual using Blackboard. I was just on a call earlier this morning. We did things called express enrollment so students could stop in and do everything from start to finish and get their courses. So we're doing all of that online with using rooms like we're using in this, this panel to move students through that enrollment process. We're having virtual high school counselor sessions, letting them know of updates, see how we can assist them. We're having information sessions for prospective students. As someone mentioned, the anxiety level of our students is very high right now. So we're able to do virtual counseling sessions, financial aid, enrollment events, taking virtual tours of our campuses, and tutoring. The other thing that we did and what we've learned is sometimes we've let policy stand in the way of access. And an example of that is the assessment and placement policy, and Talia alluded to this, is that students weren't able to test because the ACT sites were shut down. So how were we going to admit students? Well, we worked with our system office and said, can we have a policy change in place on GPA? It's all those things that you would historically have taken a good 12 months, took 2 days. And then one of the things that I'm most proud of is our Student Success Connector program. We realized that students were going to struggle just having to not only take courses online, but they're juggling life. So we put together a job description for the college community, and their job description was support students so they can successfully finish the end of the semester. We broke up the entire enrollment in the college, and 79 of our faculty and staff volunteered, and they were given 30 to 50 students. And we check in with them every week, asking them how they're doing. Can we support them? Do we need to connect them to services? So that's been a wonderful, wonderful experience for all of us, experiencing this event through our students' eyes. Now that the semester's over, we realize we have a lot of students with incomplete grades. So we're going to redeploy the Student Success Connector program and start reaching out to those students and reminding them to finish that work so that they can complete that course. Okay. Thanks, Jason. As again, Talia said, there's an equity in technology. And so we developed our IT people, scoured the campuses, cleaned up computers, and we developed a loaner program for students. We've moved student engagement activities to social media. We've continued to hire faculty and staff virtually. Our food pantries remained open. We continue to develop new courses online. We've implemented simulation software. That's been one of the most amazing things. All the publishers have opened up all access to all their simulation software so that we could continue programs online. So for example, our nursing program was able to complete this semester because of the simulation packages that students were able to do from their laptops. And then we reallocated our Perkins funding to support what the future will look like. So our welding instructor wanted to do videos for their students and upload those, but what we found is when they, the light interfered with the quality of the video and students couldn't see what the weld was supposed to look like. So we redeployed Perkins funding so that we could purchase a camera so he could do videos moving forward for next year. So it's all those little things that we're doing to prepare for the future and to transition that more traditional face-to-face to the online environment when and if we need to pivot again. Okay. So looking to fall and beyond, we have 3 commitments at Gateway to enhance access to education and training, create engaging and relevant curriculum, and remove barriers to higher education. So we keep these 3 commitments in front of us, and everything we do, we keep thinking, how can I plan if we're not on campus that we do not stray from these commitments? And I think it's just embracing that spirit of innovation and collaboration. And we truly feel like we're going to be stronger and better and more nimble as a result of this event. And so finally, I just wanted to put in, these are pictures from this time last year, and it's hard to believe that this was our reality. As you will see on the left, that is Will Donahue, our amazing welding instructor, and a group of high school students on their tour. And on the right, we have our nurse pinning ceremony, which would be coming up this week. I'm proud to say that Gateway has the 2nd largest nursing program in KCTCS, only to our sister school Jefferson, which has 2.5 times the enrollment of us. But all those things, that was in the past, and why it's sad that we're not there. We will find new and different and many ways, better ways of doing things in the future. So that's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Von Handorf. We appreciate that information. And again, if you have any specific questions for Gateway or related to Gateway, please hold those questions and make sure you include those in the chat at the conclusion of these presentations. So thanks again to Gateway. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Jason.
Our next presenter is Julianne Stockman from Northern Kentucky University. Julie is the Director of Corporate Engagement, and I will also mention she is also the Vice President of the Northern Kentucky Society for Human Resource Management. So I will turn it over to you, Julie.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this presentation. And thanks to Jason for reaching out to me and asking me to talk about what NKU did. So mine's going to be a little bit different. Gateway gave a great overview perspective of what they did, and a lot of that applies to NKU and to Thomas More as well. NKU has between 14 and 15,000 students, and we have 2,500 faculty and staff. So if I tried to walk through everything we did, we'd be here 5 hours and Jason would disown me. So I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is kind of walk you through what it looked like. I'm a faculty member, and what actually did we have to do to take our classes online? What did that entail? What did it look like from our perspective, from the student and the faculty perspective? So I teach a class, I teach a professionalism course at NKU called INF 201, Professionalism in Informatics. We walk through how to do a resume, how to do interviewing, how to search for an internship, co-op, or a full-time permanent position, those kinds of things. And I wanted to walk you through, I actually took screenshots of my actual course. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. And we use a classroom management piece called Canvas. Canvas and Blackboard are probably the 2 top classroom management software tools on the market. We use Canvas. We switched last year to Canvas from Blackboard. So we'll get started. I'll show you the class homepage first. Yeah, thanks, Jason. So this is what a class homepage actually looks like. You can see on the left, the modules. I'm going to talk about Kaltura in a minute. Attendance, grades, the syllabus. I'll talk about announcements, people, where it shows everybody who's in my class, and and my class has a lot of group work. So I had to create groups online. This is the first time I've ever had to do that. But one of the things I'm going to have to do for moving forward is, if you see the teeny tiny little, kind of looks like a dial on the bottom left-hand corner of the pictures, especially the top picture, that is actually there it is. That is a accessibility score. And so one of the things I didn't have time to do was look at my accessibility scores and make sure they're all in the green range. It gives you a red, yellow, and green. And luckily this time around, I did not have any students in my course that were deaf or blind, but moving forward, I'm going to have to watch my accessibility. And so a student who was blind, for example, obviously could not see these pictures, and they need to be tagged. And Canvas will tell you, will teach me, show me how to do that and the proper tagging words, so that if they have a reader could not only be able to read what was on the photo, but kind of tell them a little bit more about it. And then to students who are deaf, there are other things that you need to do in your recordings. So this is one of the things that faculty members really have to look at when they're teaching online, is what does your accessibility look like? And you really have to work closely, not only with the software tool that you're using, but also with your e-learning department, so that all of your stuff, all of your things in your class are accessible to your students. And just to let you know, we did pretty much what Gateway did. So our spring break for NKU was the second week of March. What NKU chose to do was to extend the spring break by 1 week, so the third week of March, specifically to give faculty and staff time to get their classes fully online, which I'm going to show you what that entailed in a second. And so in 5 to 7 days, 1,200 to 1,500 faculty members teaching had all of our courses online. And that was really an amazing feat to me. And most faculty had at least some of their class on Canvas, but a lot of faculty didn't have very much of it, especially if they were teaching labs. So that was a real, that was a real feat for us. So the next slide is assignments. And this was interesting for me. I have a lot of group assignments in my class. And how do you do that? How do you take group assignments, which are in your course, and take those and make them virtual? So I had to create groups. I'm not going to show you that because this is my actual course that you're looking at from this past semester. So I don't want to show student names and so forth, but I had about 30 students in my class, and I had to assign them into groups. I grouped them. I chose to group them by major because I have all majors in the College of Informatics in my class. So I grouped them by major. They had to do things like critique each other's resumes and conduct interviews with each other and do what I call web-based interviewing, virtual interviewing with each other. So that was very interesting to figure out how to do that. So I had to learn how to create groups. Then I had to connect them with one another. We do have a directory. Many students don't know how to use it. So I had to connect them with one another. A lot of them had not created profiles on Canvas of themselves. They had to create profiles so that, you have to, so that other students in the course can see how to contact you, mostly via email. So that was something that we had to look at. And so then all of my assignments had to be taken online. This is all of the assignments. And basically, if you go into an assignment, I had to create a rubric. I had to talk about the assignment. You have to assign, how are you assigning points and to what parts of the assignment? What's partial credit, what is not? All of that has to be done beforehand. Your due dates have to be in there. You can see my due dates, my points, and then they're connected to a module. And that brings us to the module. I've got two module, Jason, if you want to go ahead and forward it. I've got two modules. Oh, there's another one. So this is the resume module. So this shows all the assignments that are connected with the resume module. And then Jason, if you want to go ahead and forward through one more, this is what it looks like, the in-depth module. And you can see there's my accessibility scores and they're not very good. So I'm going to need to fix that before the fall semester and make sure that these are down and make sure they're all in the green range. So because I've got too many yellows and too many reds. So, but what you're looking at is, if we were able to click into it, I would walk you through. This is resume optimization, because when you apply online, you're applying through applicant tracking systems. And I've got bad examples of resumes and good examples of resumes, and what happens if you're using tables or templates and what that looks like from an applicant tracking system from an employer's perspective. The 8 things you need to know. These are all documents that students can click on, read, look at, and figure out basically how, and then of course we can't scroll down, but if you could see the rest of it, you would see I actually have screenshots of a real applicant tracking system. So all of this, I had to make sure that this was out and available, that all the links worked, all the documents were uploaded and in the Canvas page, in my Canvas class, that everybody could see them. So I think the next slide is probably announcements. And what are announcements? So announcements, and this, I sent a lot of them, guys. Oh my goodness. So announcements go straight to an NKU student's email box. And I probably sent out 1 or 2 a week. Now, if you're a full-time student and you are taking 3 or 4 or 5 classes, that is a huge amount of email that you are now receiving, that you're just not used to receiving. And so I had a lot of students that were saying, we've got to get these announcements down. So I tried to keep mine to once a week, and I tried to keep them to only when an assignment was due. And then I would remind them, hey guys, you've got an assignment coming up. Don't forget about it. This is what you need to do. And just kind of let them know things that are coming up and how to go about doing that. But this all populates into, I can send an announcement through Canvas and it populates into the student's nku.edu email address. So and I was a student. I'm actually enrolled in the Masters of Business Information Systems within the College of Informatics, and I got these as well from my instructor. So, and then recorded presentations. So this was probably the piece that was the most different for me. We use a classroom tool called Kaltura. And you can see it on the left over there, Kaltur, Kaltura Media Gallery and Kaltura My Media. What I chose, one of the things that a faculty member would have to do when you're looking at taking your class online and teaching e-learning from an e-learning perspective is, do I want to have synchronous classes or do I want to have asynchronous classes? Asynchronous class basically says I'm going to do the presentation if it's a lecture, and I try to keep mine short. So I try to keep mine to 20 minutes or under. So I'm going to do my little 20-minute lecture, put it up there, and students can access it whenever they want. Or if you do synchronous teaching, what that means is students will, like my class was every Monday starting at 12:50. So every Monday at 12:50, students will log in via Zoom and actually attend class, much like you're attending this Zoom meeting right now. I chose asynchronous because I realized that a lot of my students would have to attend synchronous courses. And I just thought, honestly, asynchronous would make it easier for them. So I recorded all of my presentations, all of my little 20-minute lectures up front. I did it all in 1 week. And I spaced it out, did it once a day. I made sure I had an outline of the entire lecture. A lot of times, if I wasn't happy with it, I would have to record them 2 and 3 times. I had one that I recorded 3 times before I was happy with it. And then again, back to the accessibility. You have to make sure that these are all, that your lectures and recorded presentations, not just, and I don't use PowerPoint presentations. So I use my modules, the documents that were in my modules as I walked them through the presentation, or I did it real time. So for example, my resume presentation, I pulled up a blank Word document, I set up the page with them, and I walked them through creating a resume. My LinkedIn presentation, I went to my LinkedIn profile page and walked them through how to edit and create their LinkedIn profile, how to connect with people using LinkedIn, how to use the alumni tool on LinkedIn. So that's what I tended to do. Once all those are recorded, then you need to make sure that your closed captioning works well and is in place with this. So again, with the accessibility. And the other thing that I kind of had to make sure of with my Kaltura is, and this is the real reason why I did them all in 1 week. I wanted to make sure, my fear was that my bandwidth at home, my own internet connection, was not going to be good enough. This takes a lot. So not only do you record a lecture, then you have to upload it and make sure it's uploaded into the cloud, and then you have to put it into Canvas. And my fear was that my internet at home, my home internet, I have Spectrum, was not going to be fast enough or good enough to be able to do that. So I wanted to make sure that I did it while I was still at work. And so that's one of the other reasons why I did that. So it's not just your students you have to worry about having good enough internet at home, it's your faculty as well. And then I've got the last slide is a little bit about where we are now at NKU. And I highlighted some things. So right now, all of our classes are remaining virtual. And I'm a student. I am taking a course that starts at the end of June this summer. So my class will be virtual, whereas it would used to be a face-to-face course. Our president has been publishing a message every Friday, a video message out to students, faculty, and staff, just to the campus community. Those are uploaded to YouTube and they're put on our nku.edu page. So we also have a COVID-19 campus task force, which includes an epidemiology expert from St. Elizabeth that is actually sitting on that task force, talking to us about how to keep our faculty and students and staff safe. We are referring heavily to our current strategic framework, which is access, career and community, and retention and completion. Those are our 3 pillars. So access to education for our students, career and community engagement, not only for the students, but also the community. And regarding NKU as a steward of place, and then how to retain our students and how to graduate them. We do have textbook and personal device checkout. So students were given the opportunity to go to the Norse Tech Bar. We have a Norse Tech Bar, and actually check out devices. Did they need a laptop? Did they need a personal cell phone? Did they not have internet at home? We have open internet. We had students drive to campus, park, and actually access free internet from campus. Fuel NKU is remaining in operation. That is our, if you want to call it a food bank, that is our food store that is on campus for our students. And we started a student COVID-19 emergency fund. Thus far, and I checked this on Friday, so as of Friday, there was $1,968 that had been raised, and that is the link to go to the impact.nku.edu, the project, for our COVID-19 emergency fund that students can request emergency funds for financial impact from COVID-19. And that's, like I said, I can't give, there's just too much. There's too much that NKU did. But that's what it looked like from a faculty perspective. And I'm going to end with a story. So I mentioned I was a student. I was taking an advanced statistics course. This was a hard course to, and I was face-to-face class, and I had it on Monday nights at 6:10. It started on Mondays at 6 to 6:10. So when we flipped to online, as a student, in advanced statistics, in a math course, in an advanced math class, and I do not have a math background, I found this to be really, really difficult. I struggled a lot this semester. I had to reach out to the professor. I reached out to my group. We formed groups with each other because we had a group project. And so when it came time for our final exam, our instructor tried to make it a little bit easier for us. And he divvied up the final exam into, we had a true false portion. And then we also had a show your work portion where we actually had to work out the formulas on paper. So I was going to use, I have a scanner here at home, I'm lucky, and I was going to scan my work in as a PDF and upload it to Canvas once my final exam was done. My scanner quit, so it wasn't working. So I thought, okay, now what? The next step was, all right, I have a personal cell phone, I have a smartphone, and I have an Android. There are apps. So I went out and I downloaded 2 apps, 2 scanning apps. Neither of them worked. Third option, I thought, okay, we've got a scanner at work. But at this point, I was kind of starting to panic because the final was due last Thursday by midnight, and it was after 6 o'clock by this time. So I drove to NKU, I got into the office, my office. Our campus has been closed, but faculty and staff, we have swipe cards, and we can use our ID to swipe into the building. I did that, used my key, got into my office, fired up our copier, and it did not work. So I emailed my instructor, and I had to ask him, because he had placed that we could only upload documents into Canvas that were Word documents or PDF. I had to ask him, can you broaden out the type of documents that you'll accept, because I'm going to have to take a picture with my phone, email it to myself, save it to my desktop, and then upload it to Canvas, but it's going to be a JPEG. And so that's what he had to do. And that's what I did. I took a picture of my work, and I had to go back. I'd done it in pencil. So I went back over it in pen so that you could actually see it in black ink, took a picture of it with my phone, emailed it to myself, saved it, and then uploaded it as a JPEG. And that's what I had to do. And so I'm kind of, yeah, he's not going to do that again. He'll have to change his final if he's going to have this course online again. But that gives you kind of an idea as a student, the hoops that I had to jump through just to get my final in and be able to pass the course. So, and then one of the bullet points that I didn't have on my slide is we did have a pass-fail option for our students. So they had a deadline date where if they really felt like they were struggling in a course and they felt that it was going to ding their GPA, they could flip to a pass-fail option at NKU and take a pass-fail. So, Tammy. So I didn't do that. I ended up with a B+ in my stats course, which made me, honestly, I was really happy with that because it was a struggle. But that gives you an idea of what it's like from the faculty side and from the student side to have to flip from a face-to-face class to an online course. And keep that in mind if you've got kids at home, especially your K through 12 children. What are math and science people doing? How are they? You really have to get creative with how to turn things in and how to conduct a class online. So thanks everybody, I appreciate it. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks so much, Julie. Appreciate that information. A lot of great nuggets from multiple perspectives of faculty, student, and also just administratively, everything that's happening with NKU. And I just wanted to make sure I understood. So the emergency fund that NKU has, it's over 100,000 that was raised, correct? Is that correct?
Yes, 100,968.
That's pretty impressive. Very cool. Well, thanks again for your presentation. That was great. Next up, our final presenter actually is going to be from Thomas More University, and that is Dr. Carissa Schutzman. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Schutzman.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning to everyone. And I want to thank Jason for the opportunity to talk to you about Thomas More University's response to COVID-19. And I also want to thank my colleague, Robin Norton, who connected me with Jason for this opportunity. So I'm glad that Julie went through the ins and outs of trying to put something online from a faculty perspective and from a student perspective, because I'm going to talk a little bit about both of those things at Thomas More. And then since I'm bringing up the rear of the presentations today, I'm going to talk about a little bit about higher ed in general and what we can expect moving forward over the next months and even the next years. So Jason, if you could go to the next one, please. So the key dates for our response, March 12th, our president sent out an email to the campus community. Similar to NKU, we were on spring break the 9th through the 13th, and we extended that to March 22nd to migrate our on-campus courses to online, and temporarily we suspended activities in athletics and travel. You know, at this time we were thinking, okay, this is something that may, last a few weeks. We may need to do this until mid-April. From March 12th to March 19th might as well have been a year. It took, those days, every day something else was coming out and we were adjusting to it. So on the 19th, our president announced that all of our courses would remain online for the remainder of the semester and all employees would work remotely. And all of our events were canceled through May the 10th. And on March 23rd, we began fully online classes and student services. So Thomas More University was open, but we were open virtually. So, thinking of those time frames and what Julie just showed you, we had faculty and staff who were working around the clock. It was a team effort. One of the things we did, we connected experienced online faculty with folks who maybe were less experienced, so we could build capacity as quickly as possible. So everyone came together. The most motivating factor for our faculty and staff were, how can we serve our students and make this not only a great educational opportunity, but a way to guarantee that they would have success. We closed the residence halls, but students with special circumstances were permitted to stay an extra month. We are a small private college, but we still have students who did not have places that they could go and pick up and leave in just a few days. So we allowed them to stay until they could make arrangements. And finally, as Julie mentioned at the end of her presentation, we also offered the pass-fail option to students for spring semester grades. This was to take the pressure off of them, to allow for the fact that, they may have had to move home, they may need to have picked up another job. We knew that there were lots and lots of extenuating circumstances out there, and we didn't want, them to worry about getting an A. If they just wanted to pass and earn their credit, we wanted them to be able to focus on that. Jason, can you go to the next one? So as Julie said, we did, it would take another hour presentation to talk about all of the things we did. I want to talk about 5 of the major things that I thought were really, transformative for the students to make the transition. We first launched a student survey. That March 12th email that the president sent to the campus community included a student survey for us to learn, what are the needs? Let's not make assumptions about what students need. So that gave us wonderful feedback and helped us set a course for serving our students. We also implemented a calling campaign. So every Thomas More student received a phone call, and they are continuing. We have phases that are rolling out. They are continuing to receive phone calls from faculty and staff. Of course, we assisted students with academic resources, as well as connected them to retention and counseling services. I want to say that Dr. John Ernst is in charge of our Student Success Center, and he and his team did a fabulous job and are continuing to do a fabulous job to provide the services students need for academic success. And his team also addresses not just the academic barriers, but also non-academic barriers that students may have and need some assistance with. We work directly with students who needed internet access and/or a laptop. We made arrangements to loan laptops out, to provide cards for students to use to get access to the internet. So that was also a big push right in the beginning. And we moved all of our student services online. And finally, we encouraged a culture of compassion for all, especially students. We knew in those weeks from March 12th to March 23rd, when our faculty were, hurrying to get things online, we knew that we needed to be compassionate with them. It was stressful. They wanted to do a wonderful job. They wanted to have things ready for students. So we really tried to err on the side of how can we be supportive? How can we help? How can we, decrease the stress that's going on? And the same for the students. And I would want to say that culture of compassion is continuing. In fact, one of my colleagues yesterday or earlier in the week made the comment, Dr. Michelle Geiger was saying she was teaching a class online, and she had made all of the assignments fluid as far as due dates. She encouraged students to stay, on target with the timeline, but she allowed for students who couldn't and, had to have more flexibility. And at the end of her class last week, she said that students remarked how important that was for them to be successful. And so yesterday at the dean's meeting, I shared the story with the deans and the provost, and we talked about, how can we continue this culture of compassion? And reminded ourselves that, yes, this semester is over. Our campus is opening up slowly this month. But at the same time, we still have a global crisis going on, and students are in different places. And how can we really serve them in a compassionate way so that they're successful? Next slide, Jason. I wanted to talk a little bit about the CARES Act, which I'm sure you all have read and seen news stories about, but I just wanted to give you a snapshot. This is by no means comprehensive. Mark Messenschlager, who is our Director of Financial Aid at Thomas More, he provided a wonderful professional development for my staff in the TAP area, as well as other areas in the college. And just some takeaways so you have an idea of how this Relief Act is serving students. We were given $600,000 to assist students directly, and that ranged from $150 to $1,000. And students could use that on technology, food, housing, childcare. You know, the president, again, communicated that out really well to the community so they could start making plans and start working with Mark and his team to access those funds. There is also additional emergency funding for qualifying students. That is something that must be applied for, and there has to be, you know, a rationale for why the student needs that support. And finally, students who were forced to move off campus, the CARES Act provided for some credit back to them for their room and board so that they could recover some of that money as well. Now, before I talk a little bit about higher ed in particular, I want to talk about our fall plans. Summer, can we go back, Jason? We are for summer, we are online. We have moved our graduation from May to August. We really hope that we're able to celebrate that with our graduates. We are planning for fall on ground, but we also are preparing for any kind of pivots that need to be made. Our on-ground plans, of course, include social distancing. We are including sanitizing stations everywhere. You know, we really want to create an environment where students, faculty, and staff feel safe to come back to Thomas More University's campus. And again, we are monitoring things. You know, our president has made it clear that we will follow the recommendations of the CDC, but we want to be back in person as much as possible with whatever accommodations we need to make for the fall. I want to add just a little bit about serving businesses in TAP. We do a lot of our outreach to businesses is from our TAP area. So we have been in touch with employers and are starting to offer webinars where we can talk directly to employers and to their employees about how Thomas More can partner with them moving forward in a much changed environment. So Jason, can we go to the next one? Thank you. So that's a really high overview of what we've done at Thomas More. I do want to say one final thing. Our faculty are phenomenal, and the commitment that they made to student success has really been inspirational, I think, to all of us to watch them do that. So I want to talk a little bit about higher education in general. Higher education, for those of you who are maybe junkies about higher ed and policy and things, you may know some of these things, but for others, this might be new information. Before the COVID-19 crisis, higher education was already experiencing disruption. And I want to name 5 large areas where this disruption was manifesting itself. First of all, we have a decrease of traditional student enrollment across the United States. Of course, this is a birth rate issue. There just are not as many students coming up through the K through 12 system for colleges and universities to recruit. Meanwhile, we have an increase of non-traditional students, typically working adults who want degree completion and need flexibility. They can't do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. schedule like a traditional student living on campus. Thirdly, we have alternative education and training providers who are becoming more competitive with traditional higher education. And what I mean by this, the example I'd like to share is Amazon in one of their California distribution areas. They are providing college level courses to their employees, and they are working on getting accreditation so that they are able to, the employee can take that credential, those credit hours, and apply them toward a degree, possibly with a college or university. But traditional higher education is being challenged by new and different ways of delivery. Of course, the skyrocketing student debt, which has been a story really for the last 20 years, but has really reached a fever pitch in the last 4 or 5 years. And finally, the questioning of the value of higher education. People are asking the question, is higher education worth it? I am going to have to pontificate just for a minute to say, yes, higher education is worth it. There is nothing more transformative, research shows, than earning a bachelor's degree. And it is transformative for not only that person and their financial trajectory, but it's transformative for how they live their lives, their longevity. And then the other piece is how transformative it can be for their children and generations to come. So I have to at least put in that little plug that while its value is being questioned, it is valuable. We may need to figure out different ways to provide higher education as time goes on, but the value is there. Next slide, Jason. So here are the questions that I think that we will need to ask as we move forward. How do institutions thrive rather than simply survive? What does learning look like post-COVID? What is the new normal? We've talked about at Thomas More how many students and faculty were forced to go online and had maybe not worked in an online environment and maybe discovered they liked it, that they were successful at it. And it brings things to the table that are certainly different, but are not necessarily less than an in-class experience. Will institutions develop the ability to become nimble and pivot? I think Terry mentioned at the beginning of her presentation, she talked about that, higher ed has not always had a great reputation for being responsive to different types of situations. People usually who come from the corporate world to work in higher ed are shocked sometimes at all of the bureaucracy that exists with accreditation and, if you're in a public system and so forth. So, will we all become better at being able to be responsive? How can institutions use this opportunity as a catalyst to create a more engaging online student experience? How is it that we all are going to be virtual in an online course, but how do we really continue to improve that experience so students feel just as connected and have all of those good conversations that go on before class and after class? How do we create that in an online environment? Certainly there are strategies that institutions, faculty are using, but how do we continue to increase that? And finally, is this an opportunity to change the business model of higher education? How do we continue to provide a quality education to all types of students, traditional, working adults, but yet make it affordable so that they don't come out with thousands of dollars of debt? Jason. So I want to thank you again for listening to our panel today. Thank you to my fellow presenters and again to Jason, and I'll turn it back to him.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schutzman. We really appreciate that presentation. Lots of great information as well, and lots to digest in terms of that presentation along with the other 3 presentations. So now is the time, if you have not submitted any questions in the chat feature, go ahead and submit those questions. We had a few questions that were submitted already, and I believe most of those questions that were submitted have been addressed in some way. So I'm going to start by a question that was partially addressed. There was one question that was talking a little bit about how we can ensure the accessibility of high-speed internet for individuals when we know that the inequity of those resources exists across many different communities and individuals. And so Julie from NKU did provide a response to that, but any of the other panelists want to share their thoughts on what your institution is doing to help support that effort? That was something that I think initially we didn't anticipate when all of this happened, going to virtual services, and then how are we going to ensure that we are going to engage with our students and our customers or participants? We run into that too with our programming at the Career Center. So any of the other panelists want to chime in?
Hi, it's Talia. And, I would say that we, at our own organization are certainly, working and figuring out ways to level the playing field in regard to trainees and internet. But at a bigger level, I think that it's so important for all of us as workforce experts to make sure that we're pushing on the levers that really control internet access in our country, and encouraging, Kentucky Housing Corporation to require that if there's going to be a new build with funding from HUD, that it requires high-speed access internet. There is getting, Congress just put forward a workforce, some legislation making sure that high-speed access, Wi-Fi access is a part of that, like making sure that we are informing the systems that need to be informed, that they too can be a part of the solution in our community, I think is important.
That's great feedback, Talia. Any other feedback from our other panelists on that topic?
No, I just
Great.
agree.
Go ahead.
We can do things as organizations, but it has to be bigger than one organization at a time. It really has to be a state effort.
Yeah, absolutely. So another question that we received over chat, and it wasn't formed in the phrase of a question necessarily, but I think it's relevant to the topics that we talked about today, and that is an additional disruption is identified as we see an increase in the number of Hispanic students entering higher ed nationally, and how many institutions are not adequately prepared to serve that population. So any thoughts or feedback from the panelists on that topic? And I think we could probably broaden it to not just this Hispanic population, but really all other populations that may be considered, at least in Northern Kentucky, in a minority population.
Jason, I'll add something. I'm sure other folks will have responses as well, but I think that when we talk about populations in higher ed, again, this is a disruption issue. Thinking about this traditional 18-year-old college student whose parents drop him off at college, and he has money and he has social capital and all those things, that's not the typical college student anymore. We do have students with all types of different needs. And I think the question is not necessarily is that college student college ready, but is the university student ready to meet students with whatever needs they may have.
So
That's great.
And I kind of, I talked with Ginny on chat, but it was private. So, and she knows this already, but we have a Hispanic, and I'll be honest, they've changed their name several times, so I'm not sure exactly what their name is, but we have a Hispanic Latino student services group with our own director on campus at NKU. We also have an African American group. We have an international students group, and we have individual groups with underneath the international student umbrella. So NKU has made a concerted effort to, and we call them URMs, underrepresented minorities. So we've made a concerted effort to try to not only retain, but graduate and have our underrepresented minorities feel comfortable coming to class on campus, and now, of course, attending class virtually. So there's been a concerted effort, not just from an administrative level, but from the faculty perspective. I've attended faculty groups on, okay, how do we make our Black students in class feel more comfortable? How do we be more inclusive in our class? How do we be more inclusive with our textbooks that we are using, with some of the materials that we are using? I've tried to be more diverse in the speakers that I've had coming to my course, those types of things.
That's great feedback. Thank you, all of you, for that feedback. I'm scrolling through the chat and I'm not seeing any additional questions that we haven't already covered. Okay, wait, I think I just found one. Let me read this. So this is a question for those clients or students who are enrolled in a workforce development program now. Have you addressed their training hours required for public benefit programs? Hamilton County requires 24 hours a month. Not sure about Kentucky. And so I know that for the state of Kentucky, Governor Beshear has loosened some of those requirements in terms of hours. And so I can't speak to Hamilton County or the state of Ohio in particular, but do any of our panelists have any thoughts about the students that you are working with or serving that fall within that category of those that may be receiving some public assistance or public benefits? And I know that there are quite a few.
Yes. So, there are, many students accessing public benefits like SNAP and TANF and all those important public benefits that ensure people have economic mobility in our country. And yes, the governor has allowed for some really lenient opportunities right now. And that is a wonderful thing, where students have the ability to choose if they need to take a leave of absence or if they want to maintain their training right now, and thinking about that leave of absence, that they have their children in the home and they're doing the non-traditional instruction themselves. And so how long that will continue is still unknown, but really trying to make sure that we are as supportive as possible to making sure that they're able to maintain those critical benefits.
That's great. And just for the sake of time, I'm gonna read one more question, and then we're gonna wrap up. We are approaching our time together. So one quick question about incoming freshmen for the fall 2020 semester. Tell us, one of the panelists, tell us how you are communicating with those incoming freshmen during this time. And I'm going to pick on one of you. I'm going to pick on Dr. Von Handorf.
Yeah, so if you're asking about how are we getting the word out, I think there's still a lot of questions in students' mind about the fall. Will we be face-to-face? Will we be online? So, more traditional in the sense of we're posting those updates on our website, as well as using our system marketing department to look at the different scenarios of each of those students, and then finding the outlet that matches that target population. So a lot of social media posts, sharing the opportunities of Gateway if you want to stay close to home, as well as keeping them up to date about what will fall look. And same as Thomas More, at this moment, we plan on having our traditional fall schedule in the sense of what's on there. Face-to-face will remain that way, but again, through this experience, we've learned that we can pivot very well in a moment's notice if there is a resurgence or we have to go back in a different capacity. So I guess lots of ways, social media being the most used.
Excellent. And thank you for that feedback. And I think some other, Julie, I believe, chimed in a little bit from NKU's perspective in the chat in terms of how communication is done. So thank you. I want to say a huge thanks to our panel for today, for your commitment, for your time, for your energy, and of course, the valuable information you shared. So thank you so much. We'll all give a virtual applause to you because really we appreciate your efforts. We know that this is a very challenging time for our community, for the education, the higher ed community as well. So thank you for that, and we appreciate your support. Just a quick plug, our next forum is scheduled for August 12th. We are exploring options in terms of what that's going to look like, whether it's in person or virtually, but it will take place on that date. So please mark your calendars, and we appreciate everybody who was able to participate in today's call. I think at the peak, we had a little over 70 participants during the peak of the call. So thank you so much. Stay safe and stay healthy, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.